All right, let's try this. Now, I'm in a suit, as you can see. I haven't been in a suit in a long time. I kind of missed it. I really did. But I'm in a suit today because I gave a keynote speech this morning. Oh, by the way, I don't have a cameraman behind me. I'm being tracked by an application in a smartphone situation called TiVo. I think it's TiVo. I have to check it out, but it uses facial recognition to follow you around the room. And this is going to put cameramen out of business. Anyway, I was doing a keynote speech this morning virtually for Industry Week magazine and their annual manufacturing and technology symposium and conference. And that was just the ball, but I thought, well, since I'm in the uniform, I might as well pontificate a little bit about my leadership style, which many people have asked me about. In another episode, I'll talk about how I went from being a human resource personnel guy 40 years ago to the CEO that I am today, which is an interesting story, and a lot of people ask me about that. But anyway, back to just some snippets about my leadership philosophies. And I use the word leadership, by the way, not management, because management is an overused and turn of the century phase. And I remember years ago, my mother, God rest her soul, when she was alive, she once asked me, actually she often asked me, well, you got to make sure those people work in that business, right? I mean, you're the one that makes sure that they work. And I go, well, no, Mom, actually not. I don't do that. People make sure they work all by themselves if you create the environment and the philosophy that they can thrive in. But anyway, leadership and management a lot of times are used interchangeably, and that's probably not the correct way to do it. Now, no, you can't manage anyone. You can't manage anyone. People manage themselves, or they don't. Now, people manage themselves to do the right thing, to do the productive thing, to do what is expected of them, to do what they're called to do what they've been asked to do, whatever it is. They will do that or they will not do that. And you can't make them or unmake them. That's my point. As a leader, what you have to do, the only thing you can do, is to create an environment and a situation where people want to do that, where they're happy to do that. They're not only do they want to do that, but they're thrilled to be able to do that. And that's all a function of leadership. Now, when people ask me succinctly what my leadership philosophy is, I can sum it up in 2 words: people power. It's as simple as that. People power. Now let me give you an example. I get asked about this all the time. People ask me, well, you know, I have an extraordinary team of people, by the way, always have. And people say, well, how do they do what they do? How do they do that? And I say, I have no earthly idea. And I really don't. And it's not just being modest. I really don't have any earthly idea. But let me give you an example. Not too recently, I was pulling in the parking lot, and I happened to notice over where the loading dock is was a U-Haul truck there, backed up to the dock. That's unusual because we use commercial carriers, and so we don't use U-Haul. So I thought, that's kind of odd. So I'm thinking, I think I'll just walk over there and I'll see what it's all about. So I went back there and I saw a half a dozen of our employees unloading skids of looked like electronics off this U-Haul truck. And what was curious about it is, one, we don't U-Haul stuff. And secondly, what was also curious about it was people from all parts of the factory were helping unload this. Not just the people who worked in the electronics part of the factory, but people that work in other parts of the factory were all right there helping people unload things. And curiosity did get the best of me. So I went up to them, I said, what's going on here? Well, we need some parts for the Zone Guard product. That's our award-winning safety product. We needed some parts for Zone Guard, and our supplier kind of fell down on the job and couldn't provide them in time for us to make a customer commitment. Oops, see, a little bit slow there. Couldn't provide them in time for us to make a customer commitment, so we called around everywhere we could think of, and all of our hell's half acre, and so we found the parts that we needed, and they happened to be in Erie, Pennsylvania. The guy said, you know what, I'll sell you the parts, but you're going to have to come get them yourself. So we rented the U-Haul and we got the parts ourselves. Extraordinary. And so then you might ask me, well, who gave him the authorization to go buy those parts outside of the system? You know, you work for a big corporation or you work for a bureaucratic corporation. Nobody goes outside of the system without 5-level approvals. You just, if the system says, the policy says you have to have 2 managers above you, or even 1 manager above you to rent a U-Haul as an example, or to buy parts outside of the normal purchasing system, you're just not going to be able to do it. In fact, you're just not going to do it. What was cool about this is they didn't have to ask anybody's permission. No boss told them to do it, and they didn't ask anybody for permission to do it. They just did it. They saw the need, they saw a way to do it, they got creative, they took initiative, and they just made it happen. And that's just, I love it. I see that in my business all the time. And that's the kind of employee, that's the kind of, but they have the freedom to do that. They have the autonomy to do that. They don't have bosses looking over them to say, do this, do that, don't do that. I've always talked about, if you go into a hotel, some hotels are better than others, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a service. Everybody's got beds. Every hotel's got restaurants. Every hotel's got a fitness center. Every hotel's got, same stuff. It's really the service that differentiates one hotel from another. And I was always struck by many hotels, the housekeeper, as an example, has a list, a checklist. You do this, and then you do that, you do this, you do that, you do that. If it's not on the check, guess what? If it's not on the checklist and it's something that ought to be done, he or she's probably not going to do it. Why? Number one, it's not on the checklist, so I don't have to do it, right? Checklist makes people act like robots, but every hotel in America practically has them. So if it's not on the checklist, I don't do it because I'm only supposed to do what's on the checklist. On the other hand, if it's not on the checklist, I may not even be allowed to do it. Now, that's my point. You make robots out of people by giving them checklists saying, here's what you do. Well, they're not going to do anything else because you told them here's what you should do. So you got to give people the freedom and the autonomy to do what has to be done. You create the environment where they can thrive. You create, all I do as a CEO is I create the environment. That's all I do. I don't do any more than that. I see to it that people are paid properly. I put people together in teams. I expect them to and demand that they act accordingly to team principles. And I compensate them for that. I reward them for that. I put through all the corporate policies and practices behind teamwork and a culture of excellence and a culture of respect for one another. I could go on for about a year on my philosophies in management, but I'm probably not gonna. I think what I'm going to do is maybe do some snippets here and there as I think about it, and the mood overtakes me. I'm going to do little snippets, and for what they're worth, go ahead and watch them. And if you have any questions, of course, you can come to the Miller Ingenuity website or my own website, stephenlblue.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Now, trust me I'll close this segment out with one last thing. Trust me when I tell you that you don't have a management problem that I haven't seen. And over 40 years of leadership and managing organizations, the last 22 as a CEO, the last 30 as a profit and loss executive, you do not have a problem I haven't seen. In fact, you do not have a problem I haven't solved. So just ask me, text me, email me, or call me, and I'll be happy to discuss it with you.